Good morning. It is about 7 o'clock in the morning. We're going to start this video talking about grounding. We're going to ground ourselves as we start this day. As we take a deep breath, grounding ourselves to this reality, coming back into our body. I know our focus is all over this galaxy, but bringing it back to this spot, put out the intention to see reality as it is. As we pull back those layers of disinformation and propaganda that have led us astray about this world in ways we've been led astray about ourselves. We need to breathe, and just see as it is those layers of illusion that need to be removed, that need to be grounded, that need to be cleared out. Okay, so we're talking about the Archon control grid, how we protect ourselves. First, we have to identify the ways in which it exists and the ways in which it is operating today. And we can identify that program, and we can choose to step outside that program and ground aspects of that program out of our body and out of our consciousness, out of our head. Just ground it out. We've got to identify the program. The core part of the Archon program is the illusions of separation. And it was twice in 24 hours that two different people asked me where I was from. I don't want to ignite my own personal emotions in this video, but for a few hours I was in a special space of despair that I am in this body for life. I've also talked ad nauseum about how I try to explain this to some of my viewers, and some of them don't get it because they've never walked in my shoes, so they don't know what it's like to walk down any main street in America and have people look at you because you look like what they've been told is the enemy. Some of you just don't know because you've lived sheltered lives. I do have Persian and or Arabic features. What's happening right now at the Archon game they're playing is people have confused what you look like with possibly being Muslim. It's automatically assumed. Even Daryl believes there's an Islamic invasion. My friend Daryl believes there's an Islamic. So that sat with me, that a man that I respect believes this. And other people that I've respected believe this. They believe that the Islamic invasion is taking place. And I've never seen people talk about, well, what kind of consequences could this have on people that aren't Muslims, but they look like, at least some of their family members or ancestors may be from that part of the world. What's also interesting, and I probably have a responsibility to do this, I just need to open up my heart, ground, and center so I can absorb this information. But my ancestor from 1,000 years ago, at the age of 35, I'm 35, at the age of 35, he left society. And he took himself to Herat, Afghanistan. This would be Khwaja Abdullah Ansari. And he lived until 1000 something rather. Even though he was a Sufi Muslim, and you may fault him for being even a Sufi Muslim, at that time, that would be more like I don't want to say the word New Ager, because I think what he was involved in he was involved in channeling space aliens, my ancestor. Gnosis or Gnostic thought, which some call the true Christians. There's a few documentaries you can watch about this. Daryl talks about the Cathars, or the Cathars of the 13th century, and I've watched a few documentaries recently about the Cathars and their Gnostic knowledge. The Sufis at that time, in particular, my ancestor was tapping into Gnostic knowledge. The difference between a Gnostic or a Sufi and people in the mainstream religions of Christianity or Islam, it's the fundamentalism. The Sufi and Gnostic path is to seek a direct connection with God, to understand God, to have that individual shift in consciousness. The Gospel of St. Thomas wrote about this. And those were the other teachings of Christ that the Roman Catholic Church kept out of their book. It just so happens that my ancestor, who has his own Wikipedia page, was doing very similar to St. Thomas and others. And a lot of his writings remind me of the writings that I've seen in Taoism. When I was 15, 16, 17, I was reading a lot of Buddhist and Taoist texts. This is after I had somewhat of an exposure to New Age thought. And I saw the spirituality in alternative thinking, spirituality, things like that. I also saw the disinformation. And through my upbringing, I got to see how some people can use New Age theologies to pretty much create like a different religion with a different expectation of groups coming to save us from the sky, a different version of the rapture, a different version yet similar variant of the end times theology. I also refer to mainstream New Age as mainstream New Age theology, external saviorship theology, based on being saved from outside of yourself. And that is very similar to the mainstream religions of Islam and Christianity. Because of the spiritual work that I have been doing to enlighten minds, I think that some of the archonic interference that I have come across has come from my own bloodline, the Ansars. The Ansars were the tribe of Medina. For those that don't know, they were Muhammad's bodyguards. So I come from a bloodline that leads to that, but I'm not guilty for who fucked who thousands of years ago. To get literal with it, I, as a soul, and I now believe this, chose this biology, the fusion of DNA from my parents to come into that type of a vessel to work with this information. As wild as that sounds, I feel like the same thing relates to you and why you're in your genetic spacesuit at the moment. You may have confused your genetic spacesuit for your real you. You may have confused your name for the real you. I know I have. But I'm convinced now that I'm not really Alex Ansary. And I'm convinced now that I'm not really my genetics. I'm also convinced that I picked this experience to aid me in a massive evolutionary leap, because I'm now in a situation where I either evolve or the hatred of this world can consume me. Again, if you've never walked in my shoes 3 minutes down Hawthorne Boulevard on a hot and sunny day in Portland, Oregon, to know how people look at somebody like me, white women, in some cases even black people and Hispanics, they all know I'm not exactly one of them, that I'm a different type of a human because of the fusion of my DNA. It's not to make me special, but it is something that's made me it's caused me to stand out. We live in a day and age where there are a lot of people on the internet that are reading about a Muslim invasion, even though a lot of these events, including immigration, are being controlled by the powers that be, including the wars, including the arming of ISIS. But does this knowledge about the conspiracy bring people compassion and love to those that are victims, the real victims of the conspiracy? No, most Americans are so egocentric, they think they're the ultimate victims of the world. They see themselves as the center of the world, unfortunately. They don't ever think, what is it like to be a Syrian or a Syrian girl, an Iraqi girl, an Iraqi boy? Subconsciously, they've been programmed to believe that their issues don't matter because they've been deemed terrorist or they've been deemed this or that. So do you think that when most people, even if they act like they're nice, they go, so what are you? And they really want to know, what are you? What are you? No, seriously, what are you? No, I know you're from Portland. What are you? How many of you go through that every day? You go to the market or you meet someone new and you start dialogue and then it comes out, well, where are you from? And how many of you have had that experience only to see people act different around you once you told them? Now, how many people do you think really want to hear my life story about what my dad did to me or what my mommy did to me or how I grew up on my own in a way and, first got kicked out of the house at the age of 15 for not getting good grades, but I was always questioning the matrix and rebelling against authority, rebelling against religion from a very young age. I wanted to know the secrets of this reality. Do you think people then want to talk to me about that? No, they get this weird taste in their mouth. For a brief period in time, I shot heroin because I was in so much pain about who I was. In 9/11, get this, are you ready for this? 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 I was going through that turmoil in 1999, living in my first apartment by myself, disconnected from family, going through the shit they put me through. And all this I'm going to be putting into writing because it helped make me a stronger person, the shit they put me through, the psychological abuse they put me through, the talking down to me, the stepping on my dreams and ideas, and the constant punishment because I wasn't living up to their expectations. All that paved the way for things that happened later. There was a period of self-medicating, which ultimately wasn't to be blamed on them. I came to this truth early on. The truth is, a lot of us are psychic, and we can feel the devastation in the environment. We're empathetic, some of us. We can feel the bombs dropping, and it hurts inside. And we can feel even more so the solar flares. I know that I can when they come in. Before there's even a geomagnetic storm, I've talked about this in videos for years, I can feel when something's erupting on the sun, and it can cause something inside me. We have a massive sunspot right now. And a geomagnetic storm is, by the way, expected to impact today. This is a good time, and that happens to ground and release those emotions that rise to the surface, tying this solar flare in with archonic manipulation of emotions. As I kind of explain this in an abstract way, there are a couple people that were like, over on Facebook. One lady was like, so where are you from really? I don't have a problem with Mexicans per se or Spanish, and I don't either, but I sure have seen a lot of negative Muslims. And a lot of people are experiencing this Islamic invasion solely through the internet and solely through the news cycle and the news reports. They're not actually experiencing massive amounts of Muslims up in their face saying, join us or die. That's actually not happening. And whatever groups are doing that, those are probably government groups that are financed by intelligence services or groups within the United States. And there are some people that can generally be radicalized, but that in some cases is financed. People are paying for the organization to bring people together, either the building or the propaganda or the website. There's some sort of financing or support or direction to keep people in that mindset. And so someone messaged me that thanked me for putting out that information about Roger Marsh. She ran Operation Patriot Rally Point in Arizona. But if anyone's working with Roger Marsh, they're going to have a similar mindset that the main issue is there's too many Muslims on the planet and they all got to die. We need to start a genocide. And people really are staying this shit. And so because of my physical appearance, I'm trying to explain this to some of you that aren't intelligent enough, frankly, to have seen this yet. That are maybe just now seeing this, but because you're not in my shoes, it's not on your desk. You're only seeing stories that the Muslims are gang raping all the European women. There's a massive invasion. And so to certain people, there's only one way to deal with that type of madness. You start exterminating that group of people. And that's the meme that's coming about. That's what has me concerned. I've already told you in past videos that ISIS has created different terror cells around the world, in Egypt and different places. None of you have yet figured out the dark reality that ISIS has hijacked my surname, Ansar. My name is Ansari, for those of you that, can read and see Alex Ansari. Oh, Ansari, what's that? Ansar, again, comes from tribe of Medina, goes to the origin of Islam. As if I'm to blame for who fucked who, 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 who fucked who thousands of years ago, and so on and so forth. I am now a spirit in a biological human spacesuit with a hybrid of Germanic Austrian genetics on the white side. And then I've got this other side with East Indian, other stuff, including an Afghan bloodline called the Ansar bloodline that goes back thousands of years. It also predates that Muhammad time period. Again, it was really amazing for me to discover the story of my ancestor, though, in the 1000 time period that was basically attacked by the mainstream Muslims of that day. He retreated into nature, my ancestor, from the Muslims of his day, to write and investigate his own direct connection with God. Now, of course, if you want to get killed in that day and age, come up with a new name for God. So he wasn't so radical in the sense that he used completely new terminologies. He was a Sufi Muslim. He started out, I think, learning from other Sufis. And I think that's also a very similar story to the Buddha. The Buddha became, he just basically walked away from the kingdom. And this guy also walked away from some form of wealth as well as the Buddha, my ancestors. Well, I'm going to walk away and I'm going to go do my thing. You learn from others, kind of like we may learn from others. And in the end, you reach a point in your 20s and 30s where you start teaching yourself and having this direct connection with, and sometimes there's consequences for being an outside-the-box thinker. And so for Khwaja Abdullah Ansari of Herat, Afghanistan, 1000 AD, his body is still there to this day. There's a tomb there. There's a mosque. And these terms like Islam and mosque have really dark connotations now because the world is being told that every Muslim, I don't know why they prefer to say Muslim over Muslim, is a terrorist and is plotting Sharia law. And I've never seen, it's worse than after 9/11. There are people that are parroting things they know nothing about. It has been very upsetting to witness this. So the game the Archons have set up is the illusions of separation. They've entrapped a lot of souls in this planet to stay here for a long time. By getting them to think it's okay to murder people from other countries, that somehow they're subhuman because they have, different looking eyebrows or different looking noses and different looking ears and kind of curlier hair and things that are outside the box in terms of features. So when I experience this hatred from Costilla County and people screaming at me, "Where are you from?" It's hard because I know where that's coming from. It's where I'm from. Literally, dude, whose balls did you come out of? Seriously, we can't get out of our head. You don't look like us. And that's what you guys don't understand. When I'm in the city or I'm in town, people just stare at me. And women haven't been attracted to me for, I would say, at least the last 5 years. You can go ahead and say whatever you want on YouTube. The greatest reality is someone doesn't know someone unless they've met them. A lot of you women have been living in this artificial matrix, artificial reality, transhumanistic, just get on your like. And so it's perverted your senses. And so technology has taken front seat when it comes to how we interact. The only people that have actually been drawn to me to come out and meet me have been some very disturbed women over the years. Very disturbed. Disturbed as in entities disturbed. As in they were sent out to throw me off my path. Disturbed. People that have come to meet me in the past, or some that came to Portland. Or I've come across a lot of broken women in my life. Ironically, a lot of them that take drugs, pharmaceutical drugs, and somehow think it's normal. Fundamentalist ones way out in the New Age path, way out in the religious path, and my very upbringing, being born and being raised, that was the first experience with Archon-style trauma-based mind control, coming through someone raising me and trying to brainwash me and punish me when they had the ability to, for not yielding to their control, for not recognizing their authority. My rebellion against their authority and their abuse and their angry words only created more of a prison for me while I was still a child with under parental care. And so that's the first form of rebellion. And what I have come to understand my own life spiritually is that I have, through my own life experience, come to a lot of truths. Right now is a critical time in my life in just a lot of things, but I feel like this is a time where I'm looking more going to the next cycle of this Gnostic knowledge. I'm going to be reading some of my ancestors' work. I'm going to be reading the Gospel of St. Thomas. John Lash talks about the Archons. I steer clear of John Lash. John Lash, in my opinion, is affected by archonic programming, putting all his focus on white genocide. They're killing all the whites. They're killing all the whites. And he actually did a lecture with Henry Makow, who was clearly archonically infested. making everything about their news, including Paul Joseph Watson, who works for Alex Jones. They're heavily archonically infested. They have literally, Paul Joseph Watson looks like a beetle now. He's one of the greatest writers on the internet as far as over the years and covering conspiracies, and some of his stuff's still good. But ultimately, he's got those dark looking eyes because he's serving evil as they put out these fake reports. One of the things, I've mentioned this a few times, this is pretty serious, folks, because Alex Jones has been looked upon as a source of truth for years. You know, truth and disinformation, people think they're smart enough to figure out one versus the other. Oh, I know he gets a little overboard, but this stuff's right. Well, you don't need to go to him for that stuff. That's the issue, bub. Because you got a guy over here bringing people on like Joe Biggs saying there's an ISIS base in Mexico. And there are people that genuinely believe ISIS is real that looked at that story and said, well, you know, we're concerned about ISIS and we think ISIS is going to come across the border. But Alex Jones fabricated that story for ratings. And that's pretty psychotically evil. So you're doing it for ratings and you are participating in disinformation that can lead to people getting lynched. Now, let me wrap things up. We're in a day and age now where this is clearly a prison planet, an open-air prison, and a dangerous place for certain members of society, where you read about Muslim women being attacked by people in all different countries around the globe, Australia, United States, in particular Western countries, the same countries where they've pushed a lot of immigrants into after they've destroyed their homeland. And in Afghanistan, 9 out of 10 that have been murdered by drones have been completely innocent. Not terrorists, not Al-Qaeda, not Taliban. Of course, you look at Al-Qaeda, you look at Taliban, you look at ISIS, you see Western funding. This is sick. Now, Russia's rising in popularity. If they said the government collapsed and ISIS took over America, the world would cheer as Chinese and Russian troops invaded America to stop the ISIS threat. I hope you understand where I'm going with this. Dangerous days are upon us. And this is a time for prayer and reflection and getting beyond your own hatred, because we're being led towards something. We may very well be led towards a massive genocide that later leads towards the occupation of the United States. And who knows what can happen from there. All I am is a messenger, but I'm not the only. I'm one of many that is alive today. And some of us are alive in unique genetic spacesuits for reasons we don't understand. But I know now that I'm not really this genetic spacesuit. I know now that I'm not really Alex Ansary. I know now that it's not really wise to assume that I'm being punished for this experience, but this experience may be happening for me to evolve greatly beyond these types of genetic spacesuits. You think I want to keep coming back to these type of Earth-like realities where people are stuck in the illusion of separation? I want one thing and one thing only for my next life. I want to go and I want to live on a planet where it doesn't matter where I'm from. I'm Alex Ansary, sign off for November 2nd, 2015.